This video is a long one. We're going to be building and giving initial thoughts on this 3D printer. It's the WanHao Duplicator 9 Mark II. The only thing that happened during the recording of this video is when I got to the situation where I was aligning the bed and everything, I had a couple of issues with the sensor, which I do talk about, but it then meant that the kind of finalization of the bed alignment was missed. But it's very straightforward, so that's really the only thing that is missing from this video. So hopefully it helps and enjoy it. But so far this has been a really good 3D printer with the test prints I've done so far. Okay, so this is it, the contents of the box that this WanHao D9 Mark II came in. So we are going to go through everything we have here, put the printer together, hopefully get everything configured, level the bed, and then do a test print and kind of see how it goes. So this is the D9 Mark II 300 model. There's also a 400 and a 500, and the only difference from the 300, 400, 500 is the bed size. So this one has a 300mm by 300mm bed size. The 400 also has 400 by 400, and the 500 by 500. Regardless of what version you get, they all print up to 400 millimeters high. So I went for this size because it would basically fit, hopefully fit in the storage area that I have. Anything bigger would just cause me some problems. The frame is pretty much similar on the 400. But the reason I also didn't go for it is it's almost double the price just for that extra 10 centimeters. So I decided to stick with this one, and this will give me kind of a print size area almost the same size as kind of one of my display cabinets. So in theory I could print an Iron Man helmet on here in kind of one go if I wanted to. So that's the kind of size of stuff that I'm looking for. The reason I went with WanHao is for a couple of reasons. One is I have the WanHao 4DS that I've had for nearly 4 years now, and it's been a really good printer. I still plan to keep it and use it, but it's easy to get parts, so that I'm confident and happy with the brand. And I think any kind of 3D printer, there's pros and cons to all of them. I decided to go for this one for a couple of reasons. Like I said, familiar with the brand. It has USB support and SD card slot on the side. Very nice, easy access. Also has on-off switch on the front right-hand side. So again, easy to turn it on and off. One of the frustrations I have with my current 3D printer is the power switch at the back, which is a bit annoying. I'll also do a separate video where I show you how to set up Astro Print. That's a fantastic way of configuring a Raspberry Pi to be able to control your 3D printer of your network. And I plan to build another one of those for this, like I have for my existing WanHao. Then another thing that's quite cool about this kind of printer, just because I like to geek out, is you can have a camera watching, obviously you're recording what's happening, and it's not the bed that's moving, it's the nozzle around it. So much better for kind of remote monitoring. Also, I really like the fact that it has a built-in fan for the nozzle, so it's good for cooling and printing PLA and everything. Also has auto leveling as well. So there's a couple of things that annoy me with my older one that I'm really looking forward to with this one. So in the box, a lot of things are kind of pre-assembled. So obviously the bed and everything is already kind of set up. One thing that I recommend you do is go around and check that everything is tight. It may be loose in transit or when it was constructed. Then what we need to do is basically connect the frame, configure things up, do a manual bed leveling, then we can do an auto bed leveling and kind of get things going. So there's a very basic guide about how we get things together. So hopefully we get that working nicely in this video. We get a free 0.3 kilograms of white PLA 1.75mm plastic here, so we can do some test prints with. And let me just move my knife out of the way. And then a box of bits to obviously construct this. So there's a few things again that are quite kind of funky about this kind of this version, especially the Mark II version. So one of the things I really like is this is a magnetic cover on the heat bed. So once things have been printed, I can literally lift this up and get the prints off a lot easier, which is fantastic. It comes with various parts, so Allen keys and the bolts and everything else, which you would expect. There is a spare nozzle and hot end in there, so you can, if you need to replace that, you already have a spare. We have a USB cable for connecting up either to get into this Astro print box or to your computer. You can print directly from that. There is a spool holder for your plastic. It's actually quite small, but I know that we can print a larger one of those if we want to, so I might print one of those as a test print. We'll see how we get on. Also, we're here in the UK, so a 3-pin kettle lead for powering it. This here is for help cleaning up the nozzle. So I had to buy one of these on my last WanHao. So basically, if you ever get some blockage inside your nozzle, you can use this to kind of force some of the plastic that's not extruding through. Really handy. So it's really nice that comes with one of those, as well as a spare nozzle and hot end. It comes with an 8GB SD card, so you can get your first initial prints on there. Bit of plastic tubing for something, which I'm sure will become more apparent later. Comes with Allen key or hex key drivers to make construction super easy, and we have 2 of those, 2 different sizes. So literally you're getting all the tools and everything. So if you have no tools or whatever to put this printer together, you have it in this. This is the mount for obviously putting the printer spool on the top. And then lastly, something that I think is a nice touch, and again these are things that came as part of the Mark II package, is this kind of what looks like a lanyard. I don't know what they're officially called. I call them a twanger. But you're basically going to attach this to the top of the spool holder, and this will clip around basically the connection for the filament and the electronics to the nozzle to kind of keep it some tension on it whilst the printer is moving around doing things. So you basically just get everything. You don't need any tools or any prior experience. You can just get going with this printer with just what's in the box, and WanHao have basically supplied everything. So what we do is I will clean up desk space a little bit, kind of align some of my tools over here, and then we can get started on constructing everything. Okay, so I've got all my parts laid out nice and neat, so I know where all my tools are, all the bolts are and everything. Couple of things I noticed, that I think they probably do some test printing either on the actual unit itself, definitely with the hot end and the nozzle, because I can see a little bit of red PLA at the end of the nozzle. So I think they do some test printing, which is pretty good, or at least test things are working properly. And also there are some bolts that are already in the channels from where they've obviously constructed this prior to departure. So that's pretty good as well. What I'm going to do is go around and check a few things before we start putting together, make sure that the current bolts and everything aren't kind of too loose, and then I may also get a level and things to make sure that kind of things at right angles, etc. So first thing easy to check is the bed leveling nuts, I guess if you would call them, are nice and tight. So this one here seems quite tight. These come loose quite often. This one's nice and tight. Back here is tight. This one has got a lot of play in it. So again, we just tighten that up so that it's much tighter, so that will make leveling the bed a lot easier later on. These clips here will probably come off, but we'll leave those on just for now. So the other things I will quickly check is just that all of these bolts are nicely secured. So get out one of our tools here. So this is a 4mm wrench, which is what it looks like it's going to be on these side units. So just check that's nice and tight there. Okay, good job we moved this forwards, because there is also, I guess you would have noticed it when we picked it up, but there's still some foam packaging underneath the bed to stop it smacking around whilst it's being transported, which is really good. So just make sure these are nice and tight whilst we're at the back here. I'm just going to pop this up on the one end so we can kind of get better access underneath. Okay, so we can see on this side that some of the bearings are quite protruding quite a lot from the wheels, or yeah, so from the rollers. So we will take those out and adjust them just so that we can make sure that everything is nice and well aligned before we turn this back up and start constructing it. That took a lot longer than I'd hoped. So basically what I ended up doing is loosening off these kind of runner brackets so I could get easier access to the rollers from the underside. As you can see in those videos, that the bearing was quite protruding on two of them, so I took them out and I took them downstairs into the workshop and just put them in a little vise that I have that has kind of rubber sides, and gently push those back together. And then once I'd put the rollers back in and make sure it aligned, just then used square edge so I can make sure that the runners were all kind of nicely lined up. And then you can see this moves quite nicely kind of forwards and backwards. So we should be in a good space. Okay, so I think the only thing that I'm still not super keen on is there does seem to be a bit of movement in the bed where it feels like it's kind of moving around in the runners a little bit, so we'll have to see kind of how that plays out. I don't think it's going to be any issue in terms of printing, because this will just be moving forwards and backwards. It's not going to be moving left to right. I do feel like that's kind of part of the issues maybe with some of these things. So I know I would consider this to be kind of budget large scale printing. I think the cruelty, I've read online that some of them have a slightly different or slightly similar issue, I should say. One of the things about the Mark II that they did is you only used to have 3 runners on the underside, and now they changed it to 4 to have kind of a better running, but obviously clearly there's still a little bit of play in there, so we have to see how things are once it's leveled. Okay, so before we start the rest of the construction, I thought I'd just show you one of the advantages of this bed. So we just use this 4mm Allen key driver just to gently persuade these out. So they are attached. You can feel there's a little kind of a bolt holding them on, so if you just push them gently, you'll be able to get them off. This is something that I like, because on the WanHao I actually used insulating tape, but it came with kind of bulldog clips to hold it on, which were never really ideal. But this is a much nicer option. You can just definitely see how everything has improved over the years. So we'll take this protective wrap off, give us access to the bed, a reassuringly nice sound. A bit creep up in there. And it's actually one of the features I really liked about this. So this is basically a magnetic bed. So underneath here is aluminium, and I can only make sure it comes off. So you can just decide kind of basically how you want to kind of print. So this side is kind of like an easier way to get it off. If you just want to print on glass, you can print on the other side as well. So really just personal preference, but it feels like it's nice quality. So I'm hoping that we're going to get some good, nice printing onto this bed. Right, let's chatting about this and see if we can't construct the damn thing. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is get the Z-axis pillar. This is easy to identify because it has a 1 on the bottom and a 3 on the top. And we're just simply going to slot this into position 1 as identified on the printer. One thing to keep in mind is there's this little bolt that's already kind of in the runner. We want to move that down so it's right at the end, just above a hole you see there. And this will enable us to kind of bolt into the bottom of this as well to get it extra secure. And what I suggest is once this is firmly in place and you've bolted it up from the front, just kind of want to swing this back around and over your table a little bit so you can get the bolt in underneath to make sure everything is nice and securely fit. Okay, and then so before we go and install on the other side, you can just plug in the cable that's labelled C into the motor, also labelled C. So just take care of that, and then we'll move over to the other pillar. So again, as you'd expect, this one is labelled number 2, as we can see indicated on the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing as plugging this into number 2 at the front of the printer here. Again, we will just make sure we move that bolt along over the hole so we can just slide things in easily. Now, you will notice that there is a ribbon cable on this one. So we just need to make sure that that is running neatly in the channel, because that will plug in to the front of the printer. Okay, now we've got that fully positioned. We can do a couple of things. Just you can run this cable down a little bit more into the tube and connect it up and into the kind of front connector, and that should be all nice and flush. Also plug in the D cable into the D motor, and then we're ready to make some good progress. Now, at the top of these arms is an Allen key bolt. We want to loosen that up about 5 mil. That's going to enable us to put the X-axis connector across the top to stabilize this out. So we'll do that now, and then grab it so we can connect it up and see how it all looks. Okay, so here we have it. It's pretty much as before. We have a number 4 here, number 4 here, 3 here and a 3 here, and we're just basically going to connect those up together. So we need to take the end caps off so we can slide it on to either side. So it's pretty straightforward. Just plastic ends, we just pop them off and put them over to one side. So we put in side 3 first. So then this just slides in here without any bother. Okay, so you pretty much just slide that on, and then once it's kind of level, we then can just do up the bolts, pop the end caps back in, and then we'll be finished. So let's just do that now, and then move on to the next stage of the build. Okay, so once we've finished making sure it's tight, obviously I'm observing that this cable is free and not snagged inside anything. We should then have a pretty robust platform. So just if there's any movement at all, make sure you just kind of tighten them up a little bit more, and you should have a really kind of rigid and robust structure. Okay, so the next part of this isn't very well marked on mine, so you should have basically a number 5 marking on the end of this. This is the piece that has your extruder on, so you should have a 5 on the one end and a 6 on the other end, and you'll have probably a longish hex bolt already kind of assembled in the one end, and on the other side it should be empty. You need to find, it's basically the longest kind of single hex bolt that you have in there. And basically what we're going to do to both of those is to attach these 2 ends to kind of offset it away from the structure. So I'll just kind of take the video to one side and show you what that should look like, and then we'll get it fitted onto the frame. Okay, so now that's done, we need to find next the second largest bolts of the kind of hex bolts that we have available in the pack. They are going to go into the rears of this mounting, and this is where the bracket will then install across the middle, and those kind of extensions that we put in just recently will sit into the rollers here. So we'll do that now, and hopefully this goes without too much of a hitch. You may decide that you need someone to assist you with this, because it can be a little bit tricky. So just line things up in here carefully. Obviously the bolt will start to push out on the back side, which is why it may be helpful to have someone to assist you. I'm just going to do this up loosely just so it can support its own weight. Okay, so that's basically what we're trying to do in terms of mounting this, and then we will tighten up and secure it once we've leveled everything out. Okay then, so all you need to do now is just hold this kind of gently to keep it level, and then do these two sides up nice and tightly. And now we're going to move on to the next stage of actually positioning, I guess, the A-frames to give some more rigidity to this, but it's now starting to look a lot more like a 3D printer. Okay, so now we're going to need to kind of take off the protective covers, slide in these kind of sliding nuts, and have the bolts ready, and that will enable us to do the connecting up that we need. So we're just going to step through that now, and then we should be finished. Okay, so now the sliding nuts are in position, we're basically just going to get the frame mounts now and those bolts and connect things into place. Now when you're tightening them up, just make sure it's aligned with the edge of the metal bars, and it should be good to go. So it's going to be something a little bit like that, and we obviously just need to adjust things a little bit so that the bolts go through, but it's pretty easy access. There's a nice big access hole here, and then a slanted access hole here, so we can get the kind of connection in. So we'll just get things put together and do the other side, and we will be finished. Okay, and that's it. These are all attached. Okay, so this rubber strip that we had earlier that we weren't quite sure what to do with it, it's basically to stick up into this gantry to help hold the cable in a bit better. So we'll gently pop this up here and stick this in so it doesn't come popping out. Okay, so we're nearing the end now. Obviously got some cables to connect up, and then I think we're pretty much ready to kind of calibrate and level the bed. So I'm just going to pop around, plug the remaining cables in, and double check there's nothing else that we need to do, and then we can move along. Okay, so one of the things also we haven't done yet is install the spool holder. So we can drop a couple of these in to this main bar here, then using these bolts just get things connected up. So let's do that now, and then we should be ready to also connect this twanger clip, so we can connect that up to the cable that runs down here as well. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the build now, so just need to kind of tidy up some cables. So over here we have a connector for our limiter switch marked A, and obviously then another motor which is also labelled B and B. So we will connect those up on this side, then we just need to connect up the bed and the the nozzle, and then we're pretty much ready, I think. Okay, so I'm hiding behind all the cables and everything now. I'm just kind of about to plug in the power, but that build took a lot longer than expected. I'm hoping that this video kind of helps you kind of do your own install, because I personally think the instructions that come with the device aren't really that kind of self-explanatory. So hopefully if you follow along here, this helps you kind of just clarify a few things that aren't clear. But now we should be good. I've made sure that this beam here is level, so you can do this a couple of ways. Obviously you can adjust at the back here to make sure it's lined up with the little lines on here. I just used the leveler on my iPhone to make sure that that was level. So now we're going to plug it in. We have a piece of paper over here that I will use to help with the manual leveling. Now another thing I like about this, as I mentioned earlier, is it has quite a good auto leveling device, but we recommend that you level manually and also with a heated bed, because obviously there will be some expansion, etc. before you do things. So let me plug this in, and then we will look at how we kind of do the setup and the leveling. Okay, so that's it. It is built, assembled, and we've done our first test print, and I'm really impressed with the quality of that first print. I really haven't done any manual configuration or tweaking, and that's come out really, really well. Some initial thoughts of this whole kind of setup and build. I think the build instructions aren't that good, so hopefully this video does help make things a little bit easier. When it came to first turning the unit on, there's a couple of little issues I had. One, obviously there was a bit of plastic still stuck in the extruder from when they did some testing, so it took a bit of a while to really heat it up and gently push it through. So as mentioned, you have this little item here that enables you to kind of gently push things through, and on the top of the kind of tools box is a little extruder cleaning wire which you can use as well. When I first turned this on, I had an issue trying to get it to auto level, and that was because there was a problem with the BL touch sensor. It wasn't kind of going into the right mode. So what I found is I checked all the wires, and they were all fully seated, but they just need to be joggled a little bit to make it so it worked properly. So you want to make sure that when you turn the unit on, that BL touch is predominantly red, but towards the kind of back end you'll see it looks slightly blue. If it's all red and there's none of that blueness, then there's a little bit of a problem. So I recommend that you kind of just wiggle the wires into the main board and to extruder, because you need it to be able to go into a blue mode when it's doing the setting. Otherwise it will drive the print head into the bed. It's not going to ruin anything, it's just obviously not great, that's not what you want. But yeah, apart from that, the build quality seems really good, and I'm just really happy with how well this is printed in the first test item. So I do follow-up videos in the future, because really this is obviously just one print, not super complicated, and I've got plenty of things to print. It does print a little bit slower than I thought it would, so that's another thing I'm going to look into in terms of settings. And believe it or not, it is larger than I thought it was, so it may not go in the space that I had originally planned. But again, no major issues, and I'm really hoping that it's going to be a great printer. And like I said, I'll follow up maybe in a month or so once I've done more prints, just to see and let you guys know how it's going on. So just for a wrap up, just so you guys know, I don't know how big this is and what kind of area you need. So if I just move this bed all the way to the back. Okay, so the unit itself, in terms of its depth, is 22.5 inches, but it does go back all the way to nearly 25 inches, so you need a decent amount of room there. In terms of its height, without the spool on top, it's about 27 inches. With the spool, you're looking around 35 inches. And then finally, in terms of its width, it is around 18.5 inches. So again, a considerable size, something to keep in mind in terms of where you're going to position and use it. But that's it. This is the WanHao D9 Mark II 300 printer. Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.